You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Bill Bender over at the Sporting News has his transfer quarterback rankings list up at the Sporting News because Bill Bender must hate being yelled at on Twitter, but he's good enough to join us now. Bill, thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. We appreciate it. Okay, so before we delve into the list and the significance of some of these guys, give me a little bit of a background of how you put the list together.
Well, I mean, you look at college football, it's wild that you look at almost a third of the Power 5 schools going to have a first-year transfer quarterback either starting or competing to start. And to me, it's not absurd anymore, right? I mean, because this is the world we live in. This is where guys, they come and go, and just went through them and kind of look to see which guys are going to be in the best situation.
Okay, best situation's interesting. So you've got Caleb Williams at the top of the list. I think a lot of people would understand that at Southern Cal. And then Dylan Gabriel, number 2 on the list, leaving Central Florida, going to Oklahoma. What do you think are the ceilings this season for those teams with those guys at the helm?
Conference championship, maybe a playoff bid. It's easier to say that for Oklahoma. Like, Oklahoma could easily win the Big 12 and go to the college football playoff and go get rolled by an SEC school like they usually do. I mean, that is not a far-fetched scenario for me at all. USC is going to be really exciting with the skill position talent they have around Caleb Williams. Lincoln Riley obviously knows what he's doing. I just don't know if they have it in the trenches yet to get to that next step, avoid like a Pac-12 kind of hiccup, kind of like Oregon last year. When we thought Oregon was a playoff team, then they turned around and lose at Stanford. That could happen to USC this year.
You've got Spencer Rattler, number 3. And it's weird, Bill, a year ago at this time, everybody's way too early mock drafts had Spencer Rattler as a top 5 pick, maybe the number 1 overall pick. Not only did he lose his job, but he's transferred now. He's interesting because he's in the SEC. What makes us believe that we're going to see the Spencer Rattler that had so much promise as opposed to the guy that lost his job?
Playmaker. And he did lose his job, but it was in a weird way. He was still – not a lot of guys lose their job when they're completing 75% of their passes. He's part of the reason he lost his job is because of the impatience to get Caleb Williams on the field. And I think at South Carolina, I spoke to him earlier in the spring. There's a change of pace. You know, Shane Beamer, obviously. The Gamecocks overachieved last season. There's no doubt about that. And with Satterfield at offensive coordinator, they meshed. And I think here's the thing, what I think is going to happen with Rattler. I think he's going to play well and do okay against a tougher schedule. The record might not show for it. The stats might not show for it, but I think he'll be a better quarterback at the next level because of it.
There's so much of this list is made up of guys that are now going to be playing in the SEC. Jackson Dart is another one who left Southern Cal and is now at Ole Miss. What can you tell us about Jackson Dart? Because LSU fans and SEC fans are going to get to see this guy. Maybe didn't watch him last year at Southern Cal.
Hasn't played a lot. I mean, he did okay when he was in there. He completed around 62% of his passes. Had some flashes through picks, like all young quarterbacks. Miss a read here or there, but I just think the marriage in Lane Kiffin's offense is going to work out. He'll put up numbers. And you got Zach Evans, the tailback from TCU, behind him, a couple transfer receivers. It may take a minute, but I think that offense lends itself to quick reads, getting guys in space, great play calling. I mean, Lane's known for that. I'll give him that. So I think it's going to be a good situation for Jackson Dart in Oxford.
Quinn Ewers, Bill Bender is, I guess, Quinn Ewers, and then I'm going to get to the SEC West, the rest of the West with LSU and Jayden Daniels and Max Johnson. But Quinn Ewers, you have 6 on the list. He's never taken a snap. What's realistic for a guy that's never played college football?
As I put in the article, it's a speculative ranking, right? Because we've heard all the recruiting rankings. I mean, he's made 7 figures in NIL and he hasn't taken a snap. So, the arm talent's there, obviously. The one thing with him, though, depending on what you watched or read from Texas this spring, is Hudson Card might be the week 1 starter. So it made it tough to rank him because I kind of went off, okay, if he starts in that offense, the upside around it, yeah, he'll put up numbers. If he doesn't, I'm going to look really dumb. So I probably should have put him a little lower. But, when guys are getting compared to Trevor Lawrence, and we want to see it, we all want to see it, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he does. I almost feel bad for him because of the expectations that are already placed on him combined with playing for Texas.
Bill Bender is our guest, Sporting News. He's on Twitter at BillBender92. He ranked the top transfer quarterbacks in college football. Bill, I want to talk about the guys leaving LSU and coming to LSU. You got Max Johnson 9 and Jayden Daniels 14. I might have actually flipped them just based on their experience. Why are you higher on Max Johnson going to A&M than Jayden Daniels coming to LSU?
Well, I think Johnson had a decent year last year, all things considered, with the numbers. And he's going to step into a favorable situation. But again, and you know what? I'll give you that because it was tough to rate Johnson because he's in a three-way battle. Haynes King could start. I don't think Connor Weigman will start because I think they're going to let him develop a little bit. But, and then on the flip side, Jayden Daniels was a guy I really loved as a freshman at Arizona State. Loved him. Watched him play Michigan State, win that game, played awesome. Kind of regressed the last two seasons, obviously with the COVID year, threw too many picks last year. And, but with Brian Kelly, I think there'll be hopefully a jump back in the right direction. But he's another guy coming in late, got to compete for the starting job. I guess in talking to you, you're thinking he's going to win it.
So, Bill, I do, but that is certainly not a consensus around here. My feeling is you don't go get a guy that started 30 games if you don't intend to play him. But there's a lot of people here that are bullish on Miles Brennan. There's a lot of people also that are convinced that Garrett Nussmeier is firmly in this battle. I ultimately think it's going to be Jayden Daniels, but again, that is far, far, far from a consensus.
Well, yeah, and if we're having just a frank conversation about it, what made this so hard to do is you had guys that started last year, like Max Johnson, like Zach Calzada at A&M, that transferred to places where they're in a battle. And it's just a weird thing to see when Calzada, for instance, could get buried on Auburn's depth chart very easily. And this is a guy that actually beat Alabama last year. It was just a head-scratching thing on some of them. But, again, this is that brave new world of college football we live in.
Do you think Zach Calzada wins that Auburn job?
I'm not sure. I mean, TJ Finley's back. They've got other people, and there's 4 quarterbacks competing for that starting job. Now, do I think he'll play at some point? Yeah. And that's a lot of these, too, is even if a guy like Jayden Daniels doesn't win the starting job, I think he's going to play at some point. And judging by Brian Kelly's quarterback history, the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year doesn't necessarily mean that guy's finishing it. Ian Book was the rarity in South Bend. So, the same thing with Calzada. He's going to have to win his playing time, and Brian Harsin, with what happened last year, I could see something very similar this year.
It's bizarre to see some of this. Connor Bazelak leaves Missouri, goes to Indiana. Of course, Emory Jones left Florida. He's now at Arizona State. We got so used to seeing Michael Penix at Indiana. He's now at Washington. A lot of people who are watching college football week 1 are probably going to need, a roster, just a guide to run through this to see who's playing where. The other guy I wanted to ask you about is JT Daniels. Obviously so highly coveted when he went to Southern Cal, looked so promising, was the guy in Georgia. We all know the story. He gets hurt, and then he gets Wally pipped, and now he's at West Virginia. Are you in any way surprised at the decision JT Daniels made to go to Morgantown?
No, because he's getting a chance to play again. He's had one of the more interesting career arcs, given that when he stepped in at USC as a freshman, he looked really good. Gets hurt, loses his job, like you said, gets in a battle with Bennett. There were people last year ahead of the national championship game that wanted JT Daniels to start over Stetson Bennett. And I always point to that. That's how fickle the job can be these days. And, I think he'll put up numbers at West Virginia. It's a big year for Neil Brown there. And the funny thing about this list is not only is it Caleb Williams at USC, there are 3 former USC quarterbacks in other places. JT Daniels, we talked about, Jackson Dart, and then Keaton Slovis at Pitt. It is, like you said, you almost need a flip card on that first Saturday to say, okay, this guy played here and now he's playing quarterback here. And that's part of the reason why we did the article.
Bill, we've talked about it a couple times. The first Saturday of the season, you're going to see Pitt against West Virginia in Pittsburgh. So you will have JT Daniels quarterbacking West Virginia against Keaton Slovis and Pitt, and it was Slovis who replaced JT Daniels in that opener when he got hurt 3 years ago, whenever it was. That is like you talk about weird career arcs. The fact that those two are going to meet in an ACC opener at Heinz Field is absolutely wild, but that is the current state of college football. One more thoughts on Bo Nix at Oregon. Is he the guy there, and the expectation go win a Pac-12 championship this year?
Well, if he starts, yeah. He's going to have to fend off Ty Thompson, a talented recruit that Oregon's had there. But, the equalizer is new coach, Dan Lanning, familiarity from Georgia, playing against Bo Nix, obviously, who Bo Nix qualifies as one of those guys when you flip on your TV this season, you're going to be like, man, that guy still plays. And there's a couple others, by the way. Your quarterbacks out there that you're going to be like, wow, that guy's still there.
No.
I think he can compete for it. If he wins the starting job, the thing about Bo Nix is he's probably going to be on the team that has the best chance to get to the college football playoff that he's been on, because Oregon's going to be pretty talented. Now, that said, he sees a familiar face in the opener against Georgia, and I can't, they're 15-point underdogs in that game.
Unbelievable, man. I guess I wasn't even thinking that far ahead, that Oregon-Georgia opener with Bo Nix against Georgia quarterback in Auburn. Anyway, it's certainly going to be a lot of fun. All right, Bill Bender, of course, Sporting News. He's on Twitter at BillBender92. We appreciate a couple of minutes, Bill. Thanks so much, man.
Hey, let's do it again soon. Thank you so much for having me on. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.